Well, we turn now to an unprecedented effort to hold the United States responsible for violence committed by its Customs and Border Protection agents. 6 years ago, in May 2010, a Mexican immigrant named Anastasio Hernandez Rojas tried to cross the border to return to San Diego, where he had lived for 25 years and had fathered 5 children. He was then stopped by Border Patrol agents. He would never see his children again. The agents initially said Hernandez Rojas had become hostile and resisted arrest, but eyewitness video showed the agents had beaten and tasered him. Footage of Hernandez Rojas' death was obtained by reporter John Carlos Frey and aired in a 2012 PBS report by correspondent John Larson.
Please. Senors, help me.
What U.S. border agents did not realize is that eyewitness videos of the incident caught the sounds of Hernandez Rojas screaming and pleading for his life.
No. Help.
And now, a never-before-seen eyewitness video of the incident raises new, disturbing questions. The dark video reveals more than a dozen U.S. border agents standing over Hernandez Rojas. It shows the firing of the taser. Was Hernandez Rojas, as the police press release suggested, combative when he was killed? Or was he on the ground, handcuffed?
Video from the PBS program Need to Know. The San Diego Coroner's Office classified Anastasio Hernandez Rojas' death as a homicide, concluding he suffered a heart attack as well as, quote, bruising to his chest, stomach, hips, knees, back, lips, head, and eyelids, 5 broken ribs, and a damaged spine. Despite these findings, the Department of Justice announced last year there was insufficient evidence to pursue federal criminal civil rights or other federal charges against the agents.
Well, today, the family of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas is taking another step in their quest for justice. Just after this broadcast, the family is filing a petition with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in Washington, D.C. We're joined now by 2 guests. Bernardo Hernandez Rojas is the brother of Anastasio, and Roxana Alfos is an associate director at UC Berkeley's International Human Rights Law Clinic. She's an international human rights lawyer and scholar. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Roxana, let's start with you. What exactly are you filing today, and what do you hope will come of it?
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today. I'm representing Anastasio's family in a suit against the United States before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. We're suing the United States for torturing and killing this unarmed father of 5. The suit also exposes the problems with the criminal investigation, a criminal investigation that lacked impartiality, that lacked independence. As you mentioned, last year, the Department of Justice closed the criminal investigation and found that the Border Patrol had used reasonable force against Anastasio. This despite eyewitness testimony, video, and audio that showed that Anastasio was handcuffed in a fetal position on the floor, pleading for his life, surrounded by 15 to 25 border agents, being beaten and tased. The DOJ's decision to close the case in one sense isn't surprising because that criminal investigation was doomed from the beginning. Criminal investigators, police investigators didn't arrive to the scene until the day after the killing. They allowed Customs Border Protection to have control of the crime scene in the crucial hours after the beating. And the agents dispersed witnesses without recording any of the information. There were over 30 eyewitnesses. They dispersed their witnesses. They seized their cameras, their cell phones, and destroyed images of the beating. And then when the police investigators finally arrived to the scene, they focused on documenting law enforcement's version of the events. They did not seek the truth. They did not try to disrupt that narrative, but just document it. So in the entire police investigation of the more than 30 eyewitnesses, only about 3 civilians were interviewed and provided statements to the police. So we are submitting the suit to prevent the U.S. government from sweeping this horrific crime under the rug, and to ensure that the United States is held accountable for violence and impunity at the border.
Well, I'd like to ask Bernardo Hernandez if you could tell us a little bit about your brother and the impact that his death and this failure of the government to act has had on your family.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Bernardo Hernández.
My name is Bernardo Hernandez Rojas. I am Anastacio's brother.
Fue asesinado.
Anastasio was murdered.
Fue torturado.
He was tortured
El 28 de mayo de
on the 28th
2010.
of May, 2010.
Han pasado 5 años y no hemos
5 years have
justicia.
elapsed and we've not found justice.
Durante estos 5 años hemos estado
During these 5 years,
peleando
we have been fighting
por encontrar justicia y no
for
han hecho
justice, and they have
No se ha
not paid
mirado
attention to us.
Eso, y que
That
esta
has not
vez
been looked into.
Estamos aquí
And
para
this time,
traer a la comisión,
we're here
a la Comisión de Derechos Humanos Interamericana de los Derechos Humanos
to file
La
with
pe- la
the
petición.
Inter-American Commission on Human Rights this petition.
Para darle seguimiento al caso de
So
Anastasio.
as to follow up on
Porque esto
Anastasio's
no puede
case,
quedar así, es una
because this
injusticia.
cannot be just left like this. It is an injustice.
Y porque durante estos 5 años hemos
For
conocido
during
también
these
más
5 years,
gente que
we
ha
have
pasado
also
por lo
met
mismo.
other people who have gone through the same
Y
thing.
siguen pasando muchas cosas en la frontera.
And many
igual.
things, very similar things continue to happen
Queremos que
at the
paren,
border.
que hagan alto a
We
estas
want this to stop.
injusticias.
We want them to stop these
Y queremos
injustices.
una respuesta del gobierno.
And
qué
we
es lo
want a
que está
response
pasando
from the
con el
government
caso
as
de mi
to
hermano,
what's
por qué
happening with
no
my
nos han
brother's case
respondido
and why
con
have
buenas
they not
noticias.
responded with good news.
And Roxana Althos, I'd like to ask you, how unprecedented is this action that you're taking of raising human rights violations with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights about violations occurring within the United States?
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is the only international human rights body with jurisdiction, with the authority to hear an individual complaint against the United States for human rights violations. Victims and advocates have used this opportunity to sue the United States on issues related to the death penalty, on issues related to immigration in the past, and on other issues. We are bringing this suit to draw the international community's attention to the much needed the need for reform of law enforcement in the United States. I think the Inter-American Commission, in terms of, this is really the bread and butter of the Inter-American Commission. Since the Commission was founded decades ago, they have decided dozens and dozens of cases dealing with extrajudicial killings. By filing this suit, we're creating an opportunity for the Inter-American Commission to bring that expertise, to bring that experience, and join the chorus of voices that have called for law enforcement reform in the United States. I think it's a really important opportunity to talk about the kind of structural and legal reform that we need, especially at the border. Since Anastasio's death, nearly 50 more people have been killed. Not a single agent in all of U.S. Border Patrol history has ever been held accountable for one of these killings, has ever been disciplined for one of these killings. As far as we know, all the agents responsible for Anastasio's death are still on active duty. They have never been disciplined, much less held criminally accountable for the killing.
There were many videos made of what happened to Anastasio. Ashley Young was another witness who shared the video she recorded on her cell phone of border police. This was shown on the PBS broadcast Need to Know.
He was just screaming, "Help me, help me, help me," in Spanish. His hands were restrained behind his back.
You could tell that his arms were somehow tied together.
Right.
And Young says she only saw him resist once when officers tried to put him back into the car. Did he lash out at the officers in any way?
He didn't. He just kind of forced his feet against the frame of the car so that he wouldn't go into the car.
Minutes later, more officers arrive.
Another officer arrived and pulled out a taser and said, you know, "Stop resisting."
Was he resisting?
No. The first tase, it was a shock. And people were like, why would they do this? And after the first tase, when he got tased several more times, that's when people erupted.
That's when, standing on this overpass with other bystanders, she shoots this. You can see Hernandez Rojas on the ground, surrounded by more than a dozen officers. Need to Know has brightened the video to make it easier to see.
Oh my God.
One agent at the top of the screen pulls off Hernandez Rojas's pants and walks away with them. But it's not until a few seconds later, when things appear to calm down, when an officer turns on his light, that we see an agent's bare leg as he kneels on what appears to be Hernandez Rojas's neck.
The next thing that happened is he stopped moving and he was convulsing during the tase. And then after the tase stopped, he just kind of lied there. I think I witnessed someone being murdered.
In 2012, Democracy Now! Spoke to Humberto Navarrete, another eyewitness to the U.S. Border Patrol Force's beating Anastasio Hernandez Rojas on the California side of the U.S.-Mexico border. Navarrete explained how he ended up taking his video of the beating and the tasering of Hernandez Rojas.
I was on my way heading to Tijuana, and that's when the first thing that I heard was Anastasio screaming at the top of his lungs, asking for help. And when I got to a more closer area, I saw what just John described, Anastasio face down in handcuffs, and two officers on uniform. And there were 5 officers in the near area. Right there when I started recording, 2 uniform officers. One of them had one of his knees on Anastasio's neck. The other officer had the other knee on Anastasio's lower back. I started noticing all these details, and the most important thing was that Anastasio was not resisting. And that's when I decided to pull out my cell phone and start recording what you can see on the first videos, and that's when I started recording.
That was Humberto Navarrete. Can you tell us, Bernardo, you're in Washington. This is a major step in your brother Anastasio's in the case of his killing by the U.S. Border Patrol. What you want to come out of this?
El resultado, quiero que
What I would like to come out of this is that penalties be imposed on the officers, that they stop doing this, that everybody know. Well, it's already known what happened. But a great many injustices are happening at the border. One of these is my brother's case, and they have not resolved anything. Something is happening here. The agents don't want to show their face. It's not been possible to punish them. They, too, need to uphold the law. Like any human being, they need to confront the justice system. If I commit a crime, I need to confront the justice system, and it should be that way for everyone across the board.
I wanted to ask Roxana, in this harrowing video where we actually see what it says, in essence, a mob killing, only a mob in uniform of Mr. Hernandez, in light of all of the debate that we're hearing in this presidential race about, especially from the Republicans, about tightening border security, and also all of the cases that we've seen of African Americans killed around the country by law enforcement, your sense of why this issue of abuse of immigrants at the border gets almost no attention these days?
Well, I think it's part of the vulnerability of border communities and the political rhetoric around border security. You know, border security cannot mean open season on border communities. CBP's current policies on use of force and accountability foster violence and impunity. A couple weeks ago, a panel of government experts, so the U.S. government recognizes, their own experts said that the disciplinary system of CBP is so broken that it does nothing to deter abuse. The United States has exponentially increased the budget of CBP since 2001. Since 9/11, but has not invested the needed resources to ensure that CBP agents are held accountable for misconduct and abuses. As Bernardo just said, no one should be above the law. Anastasio also said this as he pled for his life, as he pled for mercy. He said, "Stop treating me like an animal." We need to ensure reforms are enacted by CBP that ensure the dignity of all communities at the border, including undocumented migrants, who are some of the most vulnerable, who have real limitations, both practical and legal, to ensuring that they have access to justice. In a sense, these are the individuals, these are the communities that we have to be most careful about protecting because they are the most vulnerable. And we hope that this suit helps bring these communities into the ongoing, important national dialogue about reform, law enforcement reform.
Roxana, we want to thank you for being with us. Roxana Altos is Associate Director at UC Berkeley International Human Rights Law Clinic. And thanks so much to Bernardo Hernandez Rojas, the brother of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas, who was killed in May of 2010 while trying to enter the United States from Mexico, beaten to death by U.S. Border Patrol agents. This is Democracy Now!